Hello and welcome. January the 13th is National Peach Melba Day, and if you don't know, Peach Melba is made out of peaches, a raspberry coulis and vanilla ice cream. So I remembered that I had this Linton tweed and it's sort of peaches and raspberries, so I thought, I'm going to make that up for National Peach Melba Day. So here we go, step by step. Here is me making a Peach Melba Chanel style jacket. Once you cut all your pieces, lay them out with the backing underneath in order and then pin them all together. Each piece it has to get sewn together. The backing I prefer to use is called nets or netting. It sort of changes in each country and town. So yeah, netting, English netting, mesh. It's just really lightweight and but also quite strong. And because I do beading on all my jackets, it just carries the weight really, really well while maintaining that sort of boxy shape that's that iconic Chanel jacket silhouette. So that's why I used it. I got the idea from a vintage Christian Dior gown. They sort of have that structural dress on the inside, and then the outside dress is sort of almost a separate dress. So yeah, gives a nice strong structure. So that's why I use it. Once you've pinned all the body of the jacket together, all those pieces together, do the arms. And once you've sewn all the seams together, you just need to sew the tops of the front and back together on the torso. Next, you just need to hand stitch down all of the seam allowance. So once you've hand stitched down all the seam allowances, then turn up the hem and stitch that down. Now it's time to attach the backing to the tweed. This just helps maintain the look of the jacket for, you know, years and decades to come, so that the tweed doesn't sag. And there's fusible interfacing, or you can machine sew the backing to your actual fabric. But I find this hand stitching is the way that maintains the look of and feel of the tweed perfectly. So this is what I do. So yeah, I just pin a couple of sew lines. The larger panels I tend to do 3 rows of hand stitching, and the smaller ones I tend to do 2 rows. But if it's a particularly delicate or heavy tweed, then I'll do more. So I'll do that now. So I've stitched the fabric, the tweed, to the backing on all the panels, and also inside the arms. I've turned them, the sleeves, I've turned them in the right way now, just to check, and none of the stitches are visible, so it looks gorgeous. Okay, time to put the torso part on the dress form and just check everything is shaping up. It looks pretty good. It's always a bit tight at the top until you cut back the collar to the size it's supposed to be. So yeah, time to set the sleeves. Whoopsie, I forgot to film it. So you just pin the sleeves onto the body of the jacket and very, very carefully machine sew them, and then turn it out and put it on the dress form, and just check that both sides are fine and there's no catches or anything, and that they both look the same. If you're happy with that, then you take it off the dress form again, and you just have to clip the seam allowance under the sleeves right down, and notch the rest of it around so that the curves sit perfectly, and then just stitch down the seam allowance. And then once that is done, then the next thing is the lining. So you just get out all the pieces of the lining, and you pin everything together, then sew it. And that's the yoke that goes at the back. And once you've sewn it together, the seam, you have to sew down the seam allowance. And yeah, I hand sew mine just because it's not visible from the outside, whereas if you do it with the machine, then you can see it. And this is the part of the jacket that you see every time you put it on and take it off. So yeah, if there's ugly machine stitches there, it will annoy you every single time you put the jacket on, or you know, look at it in your wardrobe. So I always do hand stitching just because it looks so lovely. So yeah, and then of course once you've done the body and the arms separately, then you have to carefully set the sleeves of the lining. And the same, once you've machine sewn them, then you have to go around and clip onto the arm again, just so that it sits well, and then hand stitch and notch it, and then hand stitch the seam allowance, the remaining seam allowance down. And once all your lining is done, it is time to put the lining and the outer jacket together. So we'll pin them now. And once they're both sides are pinned together, then you just need to machine sew them and then hand stitch the seam allowance down. Okay, now everything is all attached together. It's time to turn everything inside out so that the right sides are facing together. So this side of the lining and this side of the outer jacket, the tweed, put them together. And then it's time to pin the collar and sew it. And once you've sewn the front and the back of the jacket together around the collar, it's time to cut off half the seam allowance. I know it seems daunting, but the jacket, once you turn the jacket out the right way again, it won't sit properly unless you cut it down, you've cut it down enough. And once you've cut down the excess seam allowance, just make notches all along so that your curve sits properly, and then turn it in the right way. Once you turned out your jacket, yay, it actually looks like a jacket now. Then you just have to pin all along the front, right around the collar, and then back down around the front. And you just need to top stitch all the layers together so that the jacket sits well. So we'll do that now. Top stitching is done and the jacket is finished. Well, finished for now. I'm going to do some beaded trim on this one to finish it off, and that will be next week's video. But if you don't want to make beaded trim for your jacket, all you have to do next is just fold up your silk lining and hand stitch that down, and the same for the cuffs. And then you just need to wait. If you're not going to put beaded trim, you're going to have to weight down the bottom of the jacket so that it sits properly with something else. So once you've sewn up the lining, just hand sew on a chain at the back on the inside, just so that the jacket sits well. And there we have it. That's the jacket for now. So I'll see you next week when I make the beaded trim for the Peach Melba jacket in these peach coloured bead clusters and the raspberry ones and other peach beads. Until then, thank you for watching.